Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here, coming at you with a quick discussion video on the new Greedon mask that got revealed recently. Yeah, so ever since he was first announced a while ago in a stream of all things, everyone's been kind of buzzed about Mr. Greedon mask here, me included, because the Greedster is one of my favorite decks in Standard. Not even going to cap about that. He's an amazing deck. I really like the concept of this unit. So hearing that he got a mask was a really pleasant surprise. So we've been waiting for it for a while. I know some of you guys have been waiting for a while as well, and he finally came to us, and it was a bit weird, champ, not gonna lie, reading this guy at first. People have been going around trying to make some deck tests, figure out how to make him work, and I decided, hell, I might as well give my thoughts here as a sort of a precursor to other content related to the guy to come. I've got a fight night on the way. I've already done recording that, so that should be alongside this video here. And then later on, after set 11 is complete, I'm going to be releasing a deck profile. So I want to wait until the support is all revealed, because there's potentially more stuff for the Greedster in this set. So I want to hold off on that as per the results of a poll recently where I asked, hey, do I jump the gun or do I not? And thankfully everyone said, no, hold up, take your time with this, but release other content, please, because we love your content, which, you know, maybe blush. Anyway, so let's go down and read this a little bit, right? I know this is kind of like a bit old school. I used to do videos like this a lot where I'd be reading Reddit posts. I'm actually gonna be doing that again for custom cards pretty soon, so be on the lookout for that as well. A lot of content I'm doing these days, huh? Kind of all over the place with it. Anyway, so Avaricious Demonic Dragon King Greedon mask. So he's got a few effects. The first one, of course, being the obligatory can only be ridden on base form grade 3. In this case, the Greedster. Duh. The second skill is really pleasant and just very straight to the point. Continuous on Van Circle. The number of cards in your damage zone to lose becomes 7. Amazing, right? You know, everyone's wondering, so if you're trying to remove Greedons from Soul, but original Greedon needed a Greedon to get the whole magic number 7 damage skill, what the hell is this Greedon going to do? Simple. He's just going to say, you're good, bro. And that is amazing because it frees up the ability to use this next skill, which lets you remove a Greedon from hand, soul, drop, you know, as per the normal kind of cost for a persona remove, as it were. You look at the top 7 cards of the deck and choose up to 1 card with a Desire Devil in its card name among them, reveal it, add it to the hand. So this is going to be the start of a theme here, which is that the Desire Devil name becomes a lot more important now. In the past, Desire Devil as a name only became important so far in as the recycle card of the deck, which is Kaduku, because he recycled back Desire Devil specifically. Aside from that, the only name that was important was Greedon himself. And spoiler alert, this doesn't get counted as original Greedon, so there's a lot of Desire Devils that don't work with this guy, but we'll get more into that after I'm done reading all the skills. So this is essentially the search skill. It helps you get more Desire Devils, and the reason why getting Desire Devils is important especially is this last skill. So auto Vanguard Circle once per turn, yes, once per turn. At the end of the battle this unit attacked, if there are 3 or more cards with Desire Devil in its card names in your soul, you can put 3 standing rear guards into your soul to stand this unit, and it gets 5,000 power to end a turn. So this is the skill that I think everyone is really debating about, right? So a lot to unpack with it. Yes, it's a once per turn, so you can only restand once as opposed to twice with the other Greedons, so it's a lower ceiling overall. There's also less power involved because there's only 5,000 versus 15,000 if you can accumulate 10 or more in soul. But not only is there no cost to it whatsoever aside from the rear guard sucking up, you only need to suck up 3 rear guards. This can mean a couple things. You can preserve an entire column for a strong attack, or you could also have 2 attacks in the front row. So you can leave your front row up and at them and just suck up your back row, which I think is the method of battle that a lot of people are going to be going with, is just sucking up the back row, right? So this is a more mid-range Greedon. It gives you a search effect. It lets you just have the 7 damage freebie for, well, free at all times as long as you're on this guy. And it lets you suck up less rear guards and for free to get the restand and still keep the drive checks. It's sure it's less power, you only do it once, but it's still pretty middle of the road, right? It still has a lot of stability to it, and I do appreciate that aspect. So let me talk about the Desire Devil that came with it. Cranky Stroller I'm not really going to be talking about. It just swaps out a card from your soul with a Desire Devil in the drop. It's not a Desire Devil, and if you're not running something for the Desire Devil name, there's a hell of a lot of other things that you could run instead of Cranky Stroller, so I wouldn't even give this guy the time of day, to be honest. But as for Desire Devil Sarsho, this is a different story entirely. I like this guy a lot. So, continues in the deck, if you have a Vanguard with Greedon in its card name, he can be counted as having the same card name as all the cards in your soul with Desire Devil in their card names. Now, this is a really funky skill, and it took me a minute to realize what this is even supposed to do. What it's supposed to do is be counted as Boshoku, so that Boshoku can add it from deck to hand instead of another Boshoku, because, as I mentioned before, Greedon Masques does not count as the original Greedon, and Boshoku only gave power to the original Greedon, so it doesn't work with the mask. Therefore, you don't want to be searching for extra copies for the deck. It's a nothing burger of a card, right? You might as well be searching vanilla. So just search this guy with Brideline instead. And the reason why that is a good idea is because of his second skill. So, continuous on the rear circle and guardian circle. If you got 3 or more cards of Desire Devil in their card names in your soul, you damn well better, because you need that for the restand. He gets 5k power and 5k shield, and it's active even on the opponent's turn. So, amazing, right? 15k base attacker, and it's also a 10k defender. We all know the value of 10k shields in a format like Standard. So, that's really nice. And because you're going to maintain your front row at most times because of the aforementioned battle formation, you could have a couple of these guys in the front row as 10k intercepts to go at it. And it's hard to attack them because they're a 15k base anyway, so your opponent's going to need to throw a little bit of extra effort to try and out them without using, well, card effects. And of course, if they are more of a retire-centric deck, you would just guard with them from the hand. They don't need to intercept for this, so it's just really nice extra shield value, and you could just pair it up with a Dragontree marker to be at 20k base. You could pair it up with also Persona Ride, as this is a mass deck, so Persona Ride is very prevalent and frequent. So that's a 30k attacker at minimum. It just stacks up on power. A really nice addition to the deck, and I'd be running a few copies of it in my version of the deck right now, as it were. So yeah, Sarsho's really nice. So talking about Greedon Masques as a whole, the deck improves, I think. Now, that might be a little bit contentious. People look at it and say, well, but it has a lower ceiling. It doesn't swing as hard. So wouldn't you say that this is just a side grade? You just trade off for more stability? I'm like, well, yeah, but you have to understand the kind of format we're in. In the current format, we need decks that have more consistency to them, right? Consistency and decent pressure all around is definitely the way to go. Sure, Greedon with extra Vanguard attacks could get threatening in the late game, but that's if you lasted that long and could maintain the resources for it, right? It's hard, and it's such a linear line of play that the opponent can prepare for it. So rather than trying to play a deck strategy that's more about catching the opponent in an awful position, you could just play a deck strategy that's just powerful because it has really good methods of attack. Now, of course, you're limited to just a 4 attack turn in this deck. That's basically your apex. But when 2 of them are just having straight up twin drive and your Vanguard's just only gaining power and it's on Persona Ride, there's some benefits to it. For instance, you can run things like Gomon. Now, Gomon is the battle door, and it was okay in original Greedon, but because of your attack patterns, you would only really be able to get like maybe a couple more attacks off of it. But in this version, after you suck up Gomon, as long as you swung with the Vanguard first, you can get 3 more attacks in addition to a second Vanguard attack with that battle door online, because it lasts until the end of the turn. That's a really good way to use Greedon Masques. Another good way to use Greedon Masques is with the effect of Clean Sweep Dragon. Now, Clean Sweep is not a Desire Devil. However, he is a really, really kick-ass card in this deck. With the more frequent Persona Rides, because A, you've got the mask cards, and B, you're not having to suck up Greedons just to try and get the 7 damage stipulation early, you'll be seeing Persona Rides a lot. And that means Clean Sweep will be able to constantly wipe your opponent's field, well, 3 units at a time, but it's essentially a field wipe, and get power while it's at it. That's really formidable, and because it's an axe skill, you can keep on doing this turn after turn by using a CB. Speaking of CB, what do we have for countercharge, right? Because we do lose out on Kusavi, which was the dedicated countercharger. It's name locked to the original Greedon. However, we actually do have a pretty decent alternative in Brick Gardener that came out recently. This card will bind itself after it's been sucked up to the soul in order to countercharge you, as long as you've got 4 more face down damage. And remember, this is Greedon we're talking about, so you could have like 6 face down damage in a game So he's pretty easy to proc, and Binding from the Soul is not that big of a deal because Greedon is sucking up 3 cards from the soul every turn, so it's rather sustainable. Another card that you can run in this version is the Dragontree Wretch. I'm not talking about Skull Kemda. I don't really like him in this version. I'd rather just run for Mask of Hydreigon and for Greedon Mask. I'm talking about the OG one, the Demon Shrieder. Now, Demon Shrieder has a really neat skill of Soul Blasting 2 to call something to his column. It's not necessarily that good on paper. You'd have to practice it to understand why it's better. Remember, with Greedon, you're sucking up, for free mind you, you're sucking up 3 into the soul every turn. You're building soul by a count of 3. That's more than what the original Greedon did because it soul blasted 2 every time and then sucked up 4. So, keep in mind, 3 cards in every turn. Demon Shrieder's effect states that you soul blast 2 and then call a grade 1 or less to its column. So you're essentially removing 3 from the soul. So every turn, your equilibrium of 3 and 3 remains. So it's not actually removing 3 from the soul. It's just making the most efficient use of what you suck in because you only need 3 in there. That's it. Everything else is excess. So you just go ahead, get rid of 2, and then call a grade 1 or less to the column. And what's really neat about that is Gomon is a part of your ride line. So every turn you can recur Gomon to get this recurring battle door. And there's no CB involved with trying to get him out of the soul. It's just soul, which again is free because of Greedon's skill. So you just get a free Gomon every turn. That's amazing. On top of that, he also can CB to give you a Dragontree marker, which, sorry, and my English is kind of bad at a late night like this, right? You know, a long night. He not only gives 5k to a rear guard, but because you can give it to Demon Shrieder himself, he becomes a 13k base for attacking 23 on Persona Ride. That's pretty good. And it is an axe skill. So every turn you can do this as well, just like with Clean Sweep. You see where I'm going with this, right? It becomes an ultra stable and consistent deck that way. You can keep on using the same resources, the same abilities. You've got the CB and the counter charge to give it back. You got like your own little super cheater CB in the form of a 6 damage that you can keep. It's got a lot going for it. Now, I would want to discuss more about my personal deck, but I'm going to save that until the end of set 11, as I mentioned before. But those are just some of my basic thoughts on what you could do with the deck. There's other ideas involved. Muka can give 5k each time Greedon attacks on Persona Ride, because Persona Ride's more consistent, and that part of Muka's effect is not locked to the OG Greedon name. You could do a couple other things like what's his name? I'm trying to remember. Bubetsu. Bubetsu can more easily get the 10 in soul stipulation to draw after you suck up into soul. So that's kind of cool, but I felt like that CB wasn't really quite as useful as before. So lots of directions you can take it. This deck has many different branching paths and can use a lot of generic resources in the Dark States Nation pretty well. It's going to come down to, and this is the big weakness of this particular Greedon, is with less power comes a longer game state, and with a longer game state comes the risk of deck out, and this thing does go through its deck a little bit fast. With the personas, you're getting the extra draws, you're digging 4 cards deep with Greedon himself every turn. Things like Kennen are going to dig into the deck. Greedon's ability to search top 7 for Desire Devils is also going to dig into the deck. The Mask card will dig in the deck for Mask or Dragontree units. There's just a lot of stuff that you can dig for, and yeah, that gets a little disconcerting after a while, right? You can get really low. As a matter of fact, as a little hint, yeah, deck out becomes kind of a concern in the fight night that I go into. I'm not going to say whether or not it kills me necessarily, because I want to leave something for the viewers, but let's just say it pops up even just that one lone game. So it is the one big weakness that I think this deck is going to have, is that it sort of lacks that finishing power. It tries to kill the opponent more in the attrition game, and that's where Gomon comes in to really rip out cards and make them vulnerable. But it might not always work, especially if your opponent can consistently recoup their advantage and guard you efficiently. So it's not like a tier 1 deck, and it's not like a super upgrade from original Greedon, but it takes it into a more effective route that still has a couple kinks to sort out before it could be a truly formidable deck that could take out a lot of dudes. It's still pretty good as it is, and it's certainly better, but it has a ways to go. But as far as starts go, I really like what they did with Greedon Mask, and hopefully set 11 gives us more cards that will make Greedon himself threatening as a Vanguard swing. And yeah, that's basically all my thoughts there. If you guys did like this video, I do have a lot of other discussion videos in my repertoire of content, I guess if you can call it that. It's a little bit of a weird word salad. Again, fight night after this, go check that out. It's basically coupled with this video. So yeah, see how the Greedster mask performs in that fight. It's a pretty good one, I'll say. And look forward to a deck profile on him later after set 11 is revealed. I've already said all this before, but it's an outro, so bear with me here. And if you did like this video, then consider leaving a subscribe and turn on the notification bell for the next time I upload. And with that, take care. God bless.